So Joe Hodgson, how are you doing?
Nice to meet you, Jim.
Nice to meet you. Tell me the story. I've got a little bit of your backstory, but not a whole lot of it. First of all, new album, Fields of Redemption.
Yes.
But there's been a long road coming up to this, and you've been through a lot of twists and turns, and that's an odyssey. You spent a good few years in London.
Yes, I was actually 27 years in London.
Oh.
Playing music. I sort of made my living over there. I was gigging 3, 4, 5 nights a week over there.
You're from around Strabane to begin with.
I'm from a place called Ballinagorry.
Uh-huh.
And that's where I started the musical journey there, like playing in a few local bands. And,
you were playing from very early, yeah?
I was playing from about the age of 14, roughly, And it all started, my interest in music started when I just opened the back door one day and I heard this noise coming from the village. I walked down and followed the parochial hall. There was this band playing. And guys who became good friends of mine, Chris Mallon, Aidan Logue, Joe Clark, Eddie Robb, were playing, and I just became engrossed in this sound. And they kind of took me under their wing, they knew I was genuinely interested. And then, of course, I was in Dublin with my cousins, and they played me Rory Gallagher, and that was it. From that moment on, I said I want to be a guitar player, And that's how it all started. And then I discovered Gary Moore, who's probably my biggest hero, and your own band, Horslips, who were hugely influential on me. So
thank you. You can hear Gary Moore in your playing. I think. I can pick out a homage to Gary here and there quite a lot. Yeah.
Back to my mind, he was the greatest rock player, blues player ever.
You saw him live a good few times.
Saw Gary live many times. I saw him. It was the day that actually changed my life. Was August 18th, 1984. So
you can remember the day, and the time. Yeah.
I saw him in Donington, the Monsters of Rock Festival, and he was fourth in the bill, Ozzy was third in the bill, Van Halen second in the bill, and AC/DC top in the bill. 80,000 people, blazing sunshine. There was a beer, and it just went wow, and Gary blew them all away. It was amazing. Again, that was not sort of, geez, I want to be like I had my two heroes, Rory Gallagher and Gary Moore, and that was kind of it,
Yeah, I saw him early on with Skid Row in the National Stadium. He was probably about 17 at that stage. Holy God.
He was actually amazing at then, he could play anything.
Yeah, extraordinary player.
Yeah.
So what age did you move to London? What brought you to London?
What brought me to London really was the band I was in at the time, Steel Claw, around was in the Strabane area. We weren't really going anywhere, and we split up, and I wasn't happy when we were playing at the time. I remember I said, right, I'm going to quit this band. I'm going to practice 7 days a week, 10, 12 hours a day. And in a year's time, I'm going to go to London, chance my luck over there and see what happens. And I did it, and...
What kind of stuff were you playing at that stage?
It was rock. It was pure rock then,
Your own stuff or covers?
In London, it was like a mixture of both, because you had to... I didn't want to do any other job. I just wanted to be a musician, so it's a cover bands and doing my own stuff, So that sort of kept me well busy,
Yeah. So you were working 5-6 days a week?
Yeah, I would say at the peak when things were really great in the early 90s, sort of mid 90s, when there was plenty of work,
Traveling all over England, or
no, mainly in London.
Okay.
We'd venture up, especially if we're doing with an original band, we'd have to places, Leeds, Liverpool, whatever, but the bread and butter was
you'd have been eating egg and chips in Watford Gap.
Yeah. But the bread and butter was always the pub gigs. I was mad. We did the last band that was over there. It was a band called Good Guy Dies, and it was a Latvian singer, and we were supporting what's his name he plays Paul Weller's guitar player. His name eludes me at the moment. And we got a support slot with them. It was a big place, the 229 Club in central London, and we got paid nothing for it. We lost money hand over fist. The next night we're going into a small little pub in Greenford and getting paid handsomely. I remember saying to Cherry, there's the illusion. The night before, people look at you and think you're doing really well, and then they come the next night saying, you're still playing pubs, Joe?
Yeah.
And we're in effect it's the other way around. You're actually doing better playing the pubs.
So what changed? What made you decide to come back from London?
Well, it was sort of one band too many splitting up was the original reason. A Good Guy Dies band was with a Latvian singer, Cherry Mackay, and I just had enough, and I came back and then my mum fell ill. She was motor neurone disease, so the timing couldn't have been better when I came back, because she was diagnosed, I was able to help nurse her with my two sisters for the last year of her life. And the more I was around, like, Balmagor, Strabane, the more I sort of went, wow, this is actually where I belong. Why was I away for so long,
You were writing your own stuff all the time.
All the time, yeah. I've since when before I went to London, even when I was back in Balmagor in the first band I was in, I was always writing stuff, trying to write, and it's never stopped.
I get the impression that you're writing more now, and so you've swung around to doing purely instrumental stuff. Were you doing less? Were you doing vocal stuff? Were you co-writing with other people before that?
The whole time I was in London, I didn't do any instrumental stuff at all. I was always in bands working in conjunction with singers, So and I found that my guitar playing was taking a backseat, and I was quite happy because you got to play always for the song, The song was always the number one thing, But I was finding I was losing my sort of chops, and I was like, that's when I came back that time. I went, Joe, you started off as a guitar player. Sit down again, practice, play, and write. And it was always a dream of mine to go back to the room in my own house and my mum and dad's house in Balmagor and record an instrumental album. And that's what happened with Apparitions, the first album in 2020.
That was your first solo album?
First solo album, yeah.
And you're on Spotify and Apple and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, all those. My music's even available in China, apparently.
Yeah. Cool. So but you've got an unusual business model in that you're financing all this stuff yourself.
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
That gives you complete control. So you're the creative director.
Complete control. Like, as I always joke with Chris, who's Chris James Ryan, who co-produced this album with me. He says, "Well, we'll get strings in this, Joe." And I said, "Well, let me consult the record company." Yes. I am the record company.
So, talking about producing this album, I look at it and I see. Let me see now. There's stuff going on in Toronto, Berlin, Galway, Brazil, Prague, New York, Las Vegas, London. How is that working? How did you pull that together? That means you've got collaborators and guys in the band and producers and engineers and percussionists and stuff all over the world, and you're pulling all this together. How did you actually how did you get that network in place?
Well, basically, I would start with my writing process. I sit down with the guitar, my knee, play, colour riff, get a little drum groove going on a drum machine. Then I've got two great friends of mine, two Austrian guys, Phil Groisbeck and Vincent Benjamin. And their day job is they play with Go West and Nick Kershaw and loads of different bands. They're high-end players, And luckily they're friends of mine, so I'll send the stuff to them and I'll say, well, Phil, that's the kind of basic groove I want. And Vincent's their best friends. So they lay down the tracks together and I'll get that back. I may redo the guitars again. Then I'll send it to Chris in Canada and say, right, or he'll say to me, why don't we try horns in this, why don't we try strings and that? And he's lots of contacts like that way.
How did you get to know him?
Well, basically, Vincent's the bass player, introduced me to him. He mixed Apparitions, so I asked him to go to Canada for a week with him there, and what was supposed to be a week's mixing ended up like 6 months back and forward, and redoing stuff. And then this time I said, right, I'm going to get Chris involved full time, properly producing it. So then he was able to source the horn players, Kelly O'Donoghue, she's in Australia, who lives in Berlin, and João Paulo Drummond in Brazil, percussionist.
I love it.
And Peter Fand in Las Vegas, who's doing the double bass, and then a couple of guys in Nashville who did some pedal steel and stuff. And so it in a roundabout way it came together,
So you put the skeleton together. You used Logic, I think you were saying.
I use Logic, and then
And do the guys use Pro Tools, or they also use Logic or Cubase, or what?
I'm not sure what they use, but I know everything then goes into Pro Tools.
Oh, eventually, yeah.
Oh yeah,
that's for the mix.
That's for the mixing because Pro Tools is
that's where you do it.
Yeah.
And there's horses for courses. There's people who would use Cubase or Logic or whatever for the whole thing, but Pro Tools is a bit of a standard.
At the end of the day, it's a mess. Press record, and the quality is usually pretty much the same. But it was a fantastic experience. And then the mixing of the album took quite a long time because we were doing it remotely again. We were doing it in real time, so Chris would be in Canada, we'd be on Google Meet, and then we'd have software. He'd be playing the mixes, and I'd say, right, move this up, try that, bit EQ and that, pan this, and together. But he's an amazing, and I'll be forever indebted for what he did for me with this album. We became instantly great friends when we first met, and his first one of his first words to me was, "Who's your favorite guitar player?" And I said, "Gary Mooney." He goes, "Mine as well." And from that moment we bonded, and we became like great. And we're apart from music, like we speak to each other, but that's the things,
Cool. So, one of the things that jumped out at me on this album is Czech Philharmonic Orchestra.
Yes.
How do you do that?
Again, that was Chris's doing. It started off. We got I said, "Well, I want strings in this, Chris," because absolutely, I know a string arranger in Hollywood, Jonas Peters.
Excuse me,
Jonas Peterson. So Jonas scored it all out, and he's like another one-man orchestra. So he'd layer all the things up, and it's beautiful. And then Chris says, "Joe, this was my album. I would get a real orchestra." And he goes, "Well, it is your album. Let's get the strings." And he goes, I know the very people, the Czech Philharmonic. So we organized it, and they've they give you like a time slot, 25 minutes, half an hour, and it's on Zoom. So Chris is in Ontario, I'm in Balmagori, they're in Prague, and they just start playing, and
your jaw drops.
It was a mess, but it was a very personal track that you I think of, because it was. It sounds like an unbelievable story, but it's actually true. I was sitting, and how it started. I was working on one of my favorite songs. It was Molly Malone, and I was trying to work out an acoustic arrangement of it. And,
I was going to ask you about that, because that creeps in over the end, yeah?
Yeah. So, as usual with me, I get sort of a bit bored and start messing around. And next thing I knew, I had this song at the beginning, a middle, and then, thanks to Molly Malone, an end. And the thought process behind this was I put myself in a space where I imagined meeting this woman from Dublin, fall in love with her, get married to her, live happily ever after. And 4 months after I finished the track, I actually did meet this woman, and she walked up the aisle to the string arrangement of You I Think Of.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Whoa, you couldn't write that. That's extraordinary. What a story.
It's true.
Congratulations. That's brilliant.
So
you're writing your own happy ending.
I'm writing my own happy ending. Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
That's brilliant. What else am I going to ask you? I was going to ask you about the picture of you on the pictures of you on the album. That's Les Paul, but it's not all Les Paul on the album.
No, it's
many guitars have you got?
Not that many. Well, compared to some people.
You're not one of these people with 400 guitars in the attic. Okay.
I've got 2 acoustics, 6 electrics, I think. But the main guitar I used on this album was a Fender Marauder, which is really quite an unusual thing. They were made in the 60s. Then they get discontinued, and then they reissued them in mid 2015, and they had one in black, one in blue. So I said, I'm going to buy them both, and very, very cheap, It's like 300 quid or something, 350. I said, this is, and I had this.
Dates from when?
Pardon, sorry?
From what year?
2015, I think, or 2011. Okay. I think it was 2011, somewhere around that period. And they've got this weird thing. It's a triple humbucker in it. Uh-huh. So it's the cheapest guitar I've got, but it's the most comfortable and the one I like playing best.
Wow.
So I used it. I used the Les Paul just on one track. The first track, The Grass Is Greener, and I used the Strat in a couple of tracks, but mainly the Fender Marauder.
You've acoustic, or you've something like a 335 on some of them. That's sort of very close to kind of bluesy acoustic kind of sound, jazzy.
It wasn't a 3. Believe it or not, I think the track I actually, believe it or not, was a Strat. I put it in the bridge position, yeah. And neck position. I made it sound like that. We reamped it through
Do you use a lot of pedals?
No, I don't use any pedals. The only pedal I've got is a wah-wah pedal. The
So
actual,
it's just you and the amp.
it's me and the amp.
One of the things that struck me was straight off, like on first track and then on every other track, that the range of tones that you get, you're not just dependent on technique, you're not just dependent on histrionics or being lyrical like Gary or whatever. You've actually got what am I trying to say here? The range of tones that you use is central to what you're saying with the guitar. And you obviously have put a lot of time and a lot of thought into getting the sounds that you get.
Yeah.
And you're getting them directly. That's between you and the guitar and the amp.
Yeah.
It's very organic.
Yeah. We sort of went for that sound. Myself and Chris said, I'm going to make this sound as real as possible. Like just, as you say, me into the amp. And so we did that with the process of reamping a lot. You know, I would go into a software amp, and I would send off the files where I've got a rough idea of the sound, and then we would put it through. He's got a range of vintage amps, like Fender Twins, Fender Bassmans, Vox AC30s, Marshalls, whatever, you know, Soldanos, and we choose which one for each track. You know,
isn't it lovely that you can do all this stuff now?
It is, but it can also be. I can also feel at times, because, you know, with an amp, with a real amp, even though I'm simulating the amp I want to and send it to him, let's try the Vox, you play into the sound as well.
Yeah.
So sometimes it doesn't work, and sometimes I have to go back and redo a few things and play more. Okay, so I'm going to choose play into the sound, you know.
Yeah, it's an interactive thing.
Yeah, of course it
sound
is,
feeds back into what you're doing. Yeah.
But generally, the reamping worked very well, and Chris has got, like, you name it, every manner of microphone you could think of. You know,
that's kind of analogous to doing a MIDI track and you change it from like a Fender to a Wurlitzer or whatever. You just,
yeah. But as I say, like, I would have in mind the sound from the beginning, you know.
Yeah.
And as I said, as you rightly said, I think this sounds pretty organic, I think, you know.
What's your other influences, guitar-wise? Well, music-wise in general. Well, like, what else would you be listening to? Do you listen to contemporary stuff? But I'll tell you why I'm asking you this, because one of the things that struck me, and you can talk about this, is your chord sequences are never predictable. You're going all over the place with how you lay stuff out. And it's lovely. It's strikes me as very proggy. That, I mean, I hear Yes, I hear like King Crimson. You know, you're doing unpredictable things with your chord sequences. And there's one of the tracks, the second or third track, is actually very classical. It's pure Bach. Like, your chord progressions are pure Bach. So musically, what would be influencing your development in that line, and also what kind of stuff would you be still listening to these days?
It's crazy, because those bands you mentioned, even though I respect them, and like King Crimson and Yes, I've never really listened to them much, you know. My main influence,
I'm using them, well, like, they would be my kind of shorthand for that kind of 70s
I get you,
proggy stuff.
Absolutely, yeah.
But fill in the gaps.
My sort of like influences, and the guys I still go back to, like Led Zeppelin would have been my favorite band, and I suppose I get, you know, that the way Jimmy Page, the way Zeppelin would never be scared to do a different type, go from track to track, jump around a little bit, you know, be expressive with the chord sequences, not be scared to go to places. But I've no real I never really listen to classical music that much, although I love it, you know. I find like lots of stuff comes to me, like, is osmosis the right word? I'm not sure.
Figures. It
kind of comes out in the fingers. You hear it and go, wow, I never learned any of that, but it seems to just come out and feel it. And so, but back to what do I listen to? I'm terrible for going back to listen to all the old guys like Clapton and Peter Green and Jeff Beck and Led Zeppelin and Rory and Gary and Thin Lizzy, who are, you know.
Peter Green was extraordinary.
Peter Green, like, was, because I remember hearing when I was young, I got the Blues Breakers album with Eric Clapton, and then I went, wow, so Clapton was only there in that band for that one album. Oh, the next album can't be as good. This guy Peter Green, who's here, put it on, it's like, it's almost even better, you know. It's sweet.
Didn't Gary do a Peter Green tribute album?
He did, and I actually he did, Blues for Greenie, and he did one gig, I didn't do a whole tour. I went to that gig in the Shepherd's Bush Empire, and it was like incredible. Like, Gary had his most restraint. I don't even think he played a fast lick all night. It must have been killing him, Gary. Like. But it was immense. It was fantastic. It was filmed and all, but I've been to quite a few of his sort of seminal gigs, like the Still Got the Blues tour. I was there at the Hammersmith Odeon where that was recorded, and I saw him in Belfast and the Donington. I saw him quite a few times, but he was always something special, Gary.
Talking about being filmed, you've got videos either done or in the pipeline for this album.
Yes, we've done. We've been quite ambitious. We did. There's 15 tracks in the album. We've done 15 videos.
What?
Yes. 8 of them are what I call real videos. It was, real life shot with.
You've done 8 real videos.
8 real videos with, where they'd be like, we work with this fantastic guy called David Ellison. He's from the Manchester area.
That is extraordinary.
Yeah. But then, like, the more we started doing them, and we had so much fun doing them, I went, wow, imagine if I could do it. A video for every track. And then, ding, ding, light bulb, AI. Let's do. So I found this young kid in Germany, Nico Fry, who has been absolutely amazing. We've done 7 AI videos where it's all story based, where like he's recreating me as a character and recreating this girl called Emma, who was in the Grass is Greener. She's in nearly all the videos. And we went into this sort of fantasy world. And then we came back. But the AI was like, it's an arduous process, because the technology is like so limited. And my wife Tracy, like, because she's a real like movie buff and stuff, and she would come up with nearly all the scripts,
Wow.
So like the stories, and I said, "Well, can we do that?" She said, "Yes, we can do that." Like you crawl out of it, then we'll go to the Bermuda Triangle, then we'll go in here. Yeah, okay, let's do it. And send a Nico, right? Nico, this is the script for this one. He went, "Are you serious?" I said, "Yeah." So you want to crash the car and you want to be climbing out the window? And I said, "Yes, Nico, just make it happen." Like, and he would,
Wow, that's extraordinary.
So the idea basically is we've got a narrative from beginning to end. It starts with the grass is greener. And it ends up the video, 7 videos, 7 AI, and it comes back to reality with the last track,
Cool. Among all, you have a lot of people working on this album. I mean, like the list of credits is huge, and the list of places that they're in is huge. But one of them is you've got a baron player, and so when you came back to Ireland, if you're getting into baron, I'm wondering, did being home give you a different angle on your music or a different angle on what you were doing?
I did, yeah, totally. It totally changed me again. I think for the better, I just came back to Ireland and I realized, wow, I mean, you just feel it, you belong, And I see you'd walk into the pub with some guy you haven't seen in 20 years. Hi, Joe, how you doing, man? You still playing? And come on, have a pint. You wouldn't get that in London, You wouldn't, But to go back to the baron player, Paul McClure, how that came about was I was writing this acoustic track, and it was actually in honor of one of the guys I first mentioned, Joe Clark, who was in the local band that I heard in the Parochial Hall. And Joe, like, sadly died at the beginning of 2024. I think it was the beginning of 2024, yeah. And I wanted to write something for Joe. And this was Dad Gad tune, first time I'd ever played Dad Gad, and I went, what notes coming from this? There's another track that almost wrote itself. I went, this needs boron on it, And found this guy, Paul McClure, he's from Buncrana, but he lives in Galway, and he's a 2-time All-Ireland boron champion. And again, we did this remotely, and he was one of the most inspiring people I've ever had the pleasure of working with.
Wow. But the sound of it's really crisp, and he's meshing in with your percussion player who's Brazilian, yeah?
Yeah, Joe Paulo Drummond, yeah, he's Brazilian, yeah.
It's a pretty cute piece of engineering, yeah?
I haven't met him, but it's mainly Chris does I said, Chris, we need some shakers, and Chris said, yeah, maybe we'll try this, and he will chat to him.
Got to say, your production is gorgeous. It flows out of the speakers. I mean, the sound is really, it's the sounds, the individual sounds are crisp, and the mix is lovely. It's a nice subtle mix,
thank you.
but it's very alive, and it's a joy to listen to. It really is. So you've got your album, you've got it manufactured, you've got it packaged, you've got it designed, and now you've got a launch coming up.
Yes, in 6 days' time in the Fir Trees Hotel in Strabane.
What's going to happen?
Well, basically, we're going to show the short film Fields of Redemption, which is basically the 15 music videos put together as a short film.
That's going to be some night.
It's going to be fantastic, hopefully like lots of friends and a few family and a few press even, hopefully. Cool. So I'm really, really looking forward to it.
After that, what's next? What future plans have you got?
Future plans on the live front, we'll see. I'd love to do some gigs doing this. I'd love to go to tour with this. Someone like Joe Bonamassa or Robin Ford or some of these guys need a support act. Give me a shout, and I'll be there.
Cool.
For after that, my mind is always in the next album, and I've spoken to Chris about it, and Chris is saying, next album, Joe, we should go to Nashville. Let's go to Nashville. Let's go to Nashville. And let's do it. Stop this flipping, he's there. Let's go and do it with some Nashville guys in a studio over 2 days, lay down the basic tracks, and then come back and do your guitar overdubs, and do it that way. So
nice idea.
That's in the pipeline, but that could be a couple of years, I said, because I have to put all this together myself, and it takes time to.
Well, I mean, it's easy to hear on this album. There's a lot of work. There's a lot of late nights gone into this. You've been burning the midnight oil a lot.
Nice, yeah. Especially when Chris is 5 hours earlier than me,
Of course,
so
yeah.
It could be like 3 a.m.
Could be worse. Could be Australia.
Yeah.
All right, Joe. Best of luck with it.
Thank you very much, Jim. Fantastic.
Keep her going.
Thank you so much.
Onward and upward.